Hi, everybody. It's Tina Holland, and this is First Friday Lunch. So, as you know, I skipped last month, and one of the reasons was this was going to be the subject last month, death and taxes. And one of the reasons I ended up kind of I guess not canceling it, but missing it altogether was that my father died last month. Those of you that watch my channel know that my mother died end of November, and my father died and pretty close to his birthday, end of March. So March 31st, we had his funeral, and then I was not really in the mood to do First Friday lunch. But I had planned on doing death and taxes simply because April is tax month. Although this year it's been extended to May 15th, May 17th, maybe. Anyway, so I've already done my taxes, but if you haven't, some of this might be relevant for those of you that are going to be doing your taxes in the next few weeks. So anyway, we'll get to it. So here's a quote that I found. The only two certainties in life are death and taxes. A common phrase used by Mark Twain. Apparently, it was attributed to Benjamin Franklin, though, in a letter to a French scientist, and I totally don't remember his name because I kind of looked that up. But so I think some of the things I wanted to talk about is death is since this is pretty close to what I've had to deal with, at least with my father. But then also from like a writer's side of things, like how you do some of the tax stuff. So we'll go that the tax part will probably be a little more in depth because the death laws, like how your estate and things like that are handled, are varied from state to state. So, three things that you probably need for just to kind of be prepared for when you pass away, or if you have a loved one that's getting older and is passing away and happens to be a writer or an artist or somebody like that, is you will need a power of attorney. That's only good for when you're alive, though. Once once I'm like, if I granted power of attorney to my oldest daughter, and that's only good until I die. And once I die, that document is no longer good. It's good to have a will. Some states you can have a holographic will, which basically means you could take the back of a bar napkin and write down, I, Tina Holland of Sound Mind. Excuse me. You could basically do a will on a piece of paper, and as long as you sign it, it'll hold up in court. Usually, the will is for when your estate ends up going to probate, which happens a lot of places. Um, my father's estate was pretty messed up, so and is still we're still going through some stuff. Probably more important than will is a letter of direction, and what this document is basically it's a letter telling your heirs or whoever's handling your estate where to find things, like where you've got bank accounts, where you have, you can basically sum up the things that you want to happen like you would in a will, but it's more inclusive. Like a will really does just deal with property and assets. That's like if you were to go to most state websites and they have wills out there or what they're looking for, it's really to divide up your assets. And that's a document that you take to court. I only know this. I'm not a lawyer by any means, but this is just my experience that I've had, and that's in the state of North Dakota. So, but a letter of direction will go ahead and tell people, like, this is where I keep the safety deposit box key. This is where my insurance are. These are where the titles to my vehicles are, those sorts of things. And also in the letter of direction, you could make notes about what you want to happen to your writing estate. Like you could say, like in my case, I'm going to leave my name and my royalties to my youngest daughter, who is an artist. And because she may be the person that is going to be most likely to want to pursue Tina Holland after I'm passed on. She might be the person that wants to write under that pseudonym. So also, when I was preparing for this, I went ahead and I looked up. There's this is from writers. I'm going to share this really quick with you guys so that you can see what I am talking about. Let's see, window there. Okay. If you have a question or a comment, go ahead and put it down in the comments below, and it'll probably come up. I'm actually going to pull that up in case people have questions. So this is, I will also put this link down here, but this is on writers and editors. And basically it's like a whole thing on what you all need to know about, you know, what happens if you pass away. And there is a ton of stuff. The other reason I kind of wanted to talk about this is if you are a small press and you are publishing stuff other than your own, if you're operating like you're an author and you're helping your friends out and you're publishing their books as well and you're operating as a small press, really address what happens to you if you pass away. Because I had written for a company called Liquid Silver Books, and I absolutely loved them. They were great to work for. But when the owner passed away, those pieces of her assets or her estate were not handled very well. There wasn't clear direction on what to do. So I think that that's an important thing, especially if you're running a publishing press and you're taking in other authors. Even just alone as a press self-published, you kind of want to address some of those issues, like what happens to the press? Does it close? Does it stay open? Do people get their rights back? What process will you have in place for people to get their rights back? And then sort of address those issues, because that ended up being a thing when the owner of Liquid Silver Books passed away for a number of the authors that were there. And we had to get in contact with lawyers and stuff like that. So it ends up being messy. So anyway, I also have this link. I will put it in the I will put it in there when I'm done as well. So that's this one here. It's, www.writersandeditors.com blog tags will. So that's kind of everything that I wanted to talk to you about death. I mean, it's not very, like I said, I'm still going through like just a basic, just since my father died and my mother had already died, and my mom didn't set up an estate or anything like that. There was no will, there was no power of attorney, none of that existed. And for my father, we took care of some of those things, but not all of those things. So it's sort of a thing where it's like, well, you really need to take time and think about these things. So this one is kind of front in my mind, but a lot of what I'm talking about really has to do with what I'm personally going through. So, and then my own personal experience. So if you have like very specific questions, I would contact somebody at your state level, because this varies state by state. Okay, so the next thing I was going to go over is taxes. If you're doing your taxes or whatever, these numbers that I have here are from 2018, but they're still sort of relevant. And what I did is I went ahead and I just this is basically how I manage my finances from month to month, and then use the sheet to do my taxes at the end of the year. So some of this, basically, these numbers over here are from the IRS, but they're dated 2018. They're still relevant, but they might be in like different categories. And like everything like 1 through 7 is basically income. So usually I just keep a line for like how much I made in this line. And then I'll deduct advertising. I'll deduct car expenses, and what you're talking about there are things like mileage, or you could deduct repairs and maintenance on your car. But if you're using your car for personal use only, I would not do that, or you can deduct the gas that you use for a trip, but you shouldn't deduct, if I remember correctly from my corporate tax days, you can't deduct mileage and gas. So if you're like taking a trip to a conference or going on a writing retreat or something like that, you can't deduct both. So depending on what gas prices are where you are, it may make sense to deduct gas over mileage. I think it might be like 52 cents as of 2020. In 2019, that was 58 cents. So it varies from year to year. But usually if you're doing an online application like TurboTax or H&R Block, they will tell you what it is. And I want to say when we did ours this year, I think it might have been like 52 cents, because outside of my writing business, my husband and I also operate a business. So for writing, what I have in here is I've got the total gross income. I deduct my advertising expenses. So this is the amount of money I paid for Courtesan of Constantinople. I'd started doing the advertising in December, but some of the checks didn't clear until January. So, and then car expenses, we covered that. That's gas or mileage. And then legal or professional fees, like I wrote in here, I haven't been a member of ROWA for a while, but if you're paying dues to be a member at a writer group, whether it's local, national, or whatever, this is where that would go. Office expenses. So when I have here is things like envelopes, paper, ink, things like that. So I don't always have, like, if I go over here to 2020, let's see, I don't know, that's pretty low. Some people deduct their actual, you can deduct your like computer or laptop, but if somebody else in your family uses it, you're really not supposed to do that. And yet you can't deduct office space for the same reason. So let's see, now I tried to click on something and it messed it up. Supplies, those are things like office supplies or other types of supplies that you would have. And taxes and licensing. I'm trying to think. Like if you like, okay, let's say you own a small press, like you're operating as a small press and you have a business set up and you've paid for a business license from your state, that's where that would go. Travel, I usually categorize mine. These are like conferences that I like to go to, but I haven't done it. Obviously, like this was a big fat zero last year because obviously nobody traveled anywhere. Deductible meals. See how this is number 24 for travel and number 24 for deductible meals? I break it out, but if you were to go out to the IRS, this is like one section. So we have a similar thing set up for this for our business. And what it does is I basically have the category split down, like office expenses would include postage, but on our business one, we have office expenses and then we have postage. So we keep it depends on how you want to do it. But those are kind of the basic ones that I do. I also grabbed a just gonna pop over here and make sure there's no comments. No, nothing. Okay. Also, so this, I pulled this up and I thought maybe I would just go through this really quick, like 22 tax deductions for writers. And this is on the John Fox, whatever. And this is a clear list from 2016. So it's older, but these are some kind of good things that you should need to know when you go to do your taxes and things you can deduct. So the first one here is, can I deduct my coffee, tea at my favorite writing cafe? No, you can't. So like, let's say you're going into a cafe to write, you can't deduct your coffee. Now, if you have a meetup group or a group of writers that go in to meet there, then yes, you could deduct your cup of coffee or your donut or, whatever it is that you're doing. Or if you go out to dinner with writers, you can deduct that. Can I deduct my Netflix? So they say yes, but I don't know that I would. I don't think I would, but that's just me. I mean, I remember like a long time ago when I first became a writer, like I hadn't been published yet, but I went to all these business classes and I went to one on taxes. And basically what this boils down to is if you can sit across from the auditor and justify your Netflix account as part of your writing, yeah, you could probably do it. If you're doing something like great courses, if you've ever heard of that, if you're doing something like that, or you're renting very specific like research type things, then I would say yes, because it's going to be a lot more cut and dry. So can I deduct food and wine bought for my writing group or book club? This kind of goes back to the question on the coffee. Similar. They're very similar. Now, what it does say here is it says you can deduct 50% for entertaining expenses. This would fall under that travel section or deductible meals. And what most software programs will do, like if you were using H&R Block, what they'll do is they'll go ahead and they'll put in like the full amount that you spent. And then it will go ahead and deduct off whatever amount the IRS is doing that year. Because it used to be that these were, like, let's say I was going to entertain a group of my readers. You can't entertain readers anymore, but I could entertain a group of writers, or at least that's what it was a few years ago. Like the laws had changed, and it's always changing around entertainment and food. So before you go ahead and decide you can deduct them, if you're doing a software program, it'll walk you through it. If you're not, maybe check the rules and regulations before you fill out the hard tax forms, if that's what you're doing. So can you deduct your website? Yep. And the reason you can is because this is part of your advertising. So and it's listing right here, domain name, hosting fees, WordPress themes, anything you pay, anybody you pay. So that stuff. I don't know about this Fiverr one, but I guess, so, but the other thing is too, is keep receipts for all this stuff. So don't deduct anything you don't have a receipt for. And even a receipt, like if let's say you went to a conference and you paid $5 in parking, make a note of it somewhere in either your planner, a log, something like that. And then the IRS isn't going to crawl up your ass about deductions, because you have to have this really good paper trail. If you have a paper trail, then I feel like you could go ahead and deduct that sort of thing. So magazine and newspaper subscription. I actually know an author friend that deducts all of her fiction books. I don't think I would do that, but I do deduct all my craft books. So if I buy something on like this is a good example. Save the Cat or whatever. If you buy a book like that, and I have a ton of these kinds of books where I've bought to try and do research. If you buy a book for research or for craft, I would say yes, you can deduct it. I'm not sure, since I write in romance, that I could deduct all my romance novels. I don't know. I don't know that I could do it with a straight face across from the auditor. So, can you deduct your home office? Yes, if it's only used as your home office. This is my home office, but this is also a guest room. There's a bed right over here. And so I couldn't really deduct it because sometimes my sister stays in here. Now, my Chromebook that I've got right in front of me that I'm broadcasting on, the first year I bought that, I could deduct it. Or you can also do what's called the, like over time you deduct, like if it's a $200, let's say it's a $500 laptop, you could deduct a percentage every year until it's fully deducted. So that's an option too. But I've always deducted laptops and Chromebooks and stuff because I'm the only person that uses this. No one else uses the Chromebook. My husband doesn't use it. My kids are moved away. So unless a cat's writing his memoirs when I'm not looking, nobody else is using the book or using this Chromebook. So yes, you can deduct your home office if it's being used exclusively. And that goes for the printers, the laptops, the computers, anything in the office. Some authors will deduct a portion of their lighting bill. You can, but I think that it does get a little more scrutinized in the sense that you better have documentation for why you're deducting, 10% of your electric bill. So it gets to be, I think it just depends on your comfort level with that. And I think that, like with any of this stuff that sort of falls into grayish area, or you've heard rumors about people being audited or something, to go ahead and say, yes, you can do that, or no, you can't, or whatever. That you just basically have to have documentation. So, can I deduct furniture? Yeah, but you can deduct, like I could, if I had purchased all this furniture, I could deduct that because it's in my office. I would say in my house, since I don't deduct anything in my office anyway, I don't think I would deduct furniture. But if you're paying, some authors will rent space like an apartment or something like that. And if you're just to write in or rent a desk they have these places now where you can go ahead and you can rent like desk space for so much a month. If you're doing that, that is totally deductible. That's a legitimate expense because you're using that space to work. And anything that you buy for that space, you could then you could deduct that as well. Sorry, I was just reading this thing about if you buy a scorpion inside amber to sit on your desk and inspire you to think of ingenious ways a serial killer can kill people, deduct that. I'm just like, this guy's very creative in his deductions. So, I mean, he's deducting stuff that I wouldn't. Yeah, so and we talked a little bit about computers and laptops. Can you deduct submission fees? This might be more specific to like writers who write for magazines, because he's talking about submitting to journals and contest submissions. Like RWA has contests that you usually pay to enter. There are some of those. And then way back in the day, you'd pay snail mail, like postage to send a manuscript. So this is where that comes in, like as late as probably like 19 or two, like the early 2000s, some publishers were still requiring you to do the letter manuscripts. You'd have letter envelopes, send off postage, and you'd get some people asked for the receipt that the person on the other end had got it. So let's see. And so the mileage, yeah, you can do. Oh, see, it says this was so it's 54 cents a mile in 2016 because that's when this article was written. But yeah, you can deduct your miles, but you can't deduct miles and gas. So that's kind of a due diligence. And that's from I remember that from corporate. Now it might just be straight deduction of miles. Pop over here. No comments. Thank you to whoever the one person is that's watching this, because I know I didn't do super great advertising for this. So can you deduct software? Yeah. So if you bought Scrivener or you've bought Word, and honestly, if you purchased Word for the hundreds of dollars or whatever, I would totally deduct that. So yeah, it's you can deduct that. And apparently you can deduct these like softwares that keep you from going out on the sun, going out on the web when you're supposed to be writing, and MailChimp, like MailChimp, MailerLite. There's those for doing newsletters. You would deduct that as well. So, okay. So this is an iffy one. Can I deduct writing research trips? So yes, if you're doing research for a book, yes, you can. But if you're going, well, I'm going to the lakes, and so I'm going to deduct it because I'm going to write a book about the lakes. That's fine. You can do that. But if you bring your whole family with and you're like doing vacation plus, then it gets grayish. So they don't really know how to handle that. The other thing is like anytime you're going on a conference, like let's say you're going to a writing conference or sort of writing retreat or anything, all that from the time you purchase your plane ticket to driving your car to the airport, paying for parking at the airport, that's all deductible. We do Writers and Garden does an annual retreat every year, and obviously we did it online last year. We're not sure if it'll be online or if it'll be real world this time, but what we'll do is I deduct that whole trip. I mean, that ends up being like gas if I end up driving to the Twin Cities to fly out there because the flight's cheaper, the flight, parking fees, food. We deduct all the food that we purchase, or I do my portion of the food, because basically how we do it is one person kind of a group of us set it up, and then you basically get a bill, and which is basically room and board. And so I'll deduct that as part of it. And we've had people write out receipts, like handwritten receipts or whatever. But if you keep an Excel spreadsheet like this, where you've got all these things broken down, that's documentation. That's enough documentation for the IRS that if you end up getting audited, that you have this spreadsheet or whatever. So, and then we talked a little bit about buying craft magazines, or if you purchase like a book on the middle ages or whatever, because you're going to write a book that takes place during that would be deductible. A job hunting costs, and I'm guessing this, for freelance writing jobs. So if you're like if you write for magazines or journals or something like that, or for an agent or editor, you can deduct that. Maybe in a similar thing is if you are a freelance author, or you're not a freelance author, if you're an indie author, self-published, and you are paying your cover artists and your editors, those are deductible as well. Yeah, apparently. And I've never deducted childcare, except this tax credit will be regardless of whether you're a writer or not. That's and Social Security taxes. I feel like that's if you make so much money or whatever. Yeah, so this one says that you have to it's not technically a business expense, but personally you have to deduct it elsewhere. All right, bank fees. Yeah, so if you are running a publishing company, then you should probably have a separate bank account anyway. So then because the other thing is, if like you're a publisher, or even if you're an author that's self-publishing, which means you're a publisher, you kind of want all those monies to be separated out. Like everything for your business, you want to be able to have that in a separate bank account. So whether you use like let's say you have a multiple credit cards, if you use one specific credit card just for your writing business, like one that doesn't have a high limit or something like that, then you've got this extra external paper trail. A bank can also serve like that. So if you are using a separate bank account, then that would be where you'd probably want to do most of your writing business out of. So it doesn't matter. It depends too a little bit on what kind of writer you are. But like I would say, if you're self-publishing, you probably already have a bank account set up for that. So writing isn't really an industry where you have to have a business license, but the more successful you are at it, like I think what it is if you make less than $400 a year or whatever, a lot of stuff doesn't really apply. But if you're making, tens of thousands of dollars, then you're probably going to want a separate bank account. You're probably going to want a business license. It just makes things easier because you've reached a certain level in the business. So I'm not there, so these aren't my problems. And I don't self-publish really. I do kind of, I guess, freelance work, but I work with small press publishers. So can you deduct deductions you didn't take from last year? Oh, I don't know about that. I would disagree with that. But what does he say? He says, yes. In fact, your expenses were far greater than your earnings, so you didn't take them all because you didn't want the IRS to look at you, but that the following year was bonanza. Okay, you're a temp carryover. You take expenses. I've never heard of that. I don't know that I would do that. I kind of cut it from year to year, but yeah, I guess if you're comfortable, once again, as if you're not worried about the IRS looking at you, because I think they would do that. Um, can you deduct what you pay an accountant? Yep. Yeah. So if you pay an accountant, like when I was trying to get settled with Liquid Silver, I was fortunate enough I was able to do all the letters and everything myself. But if I had had a lawyer, I could have deducted the lawyer as well. Yep. Can you deduct conference writing retreat expenses? Yep. We talked about that. And then there's the 50% food cost portion of it. Can you deduct a massage? Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. So you need a note from your doctor? Sure. Can you deduct all the marketing you do for your books? Yep. Yep. You can deduct all that stuff. So keep a record of your expenses so that we talked about that. You want to do that. And then here, so this one they're recommending you use Evernote. I actually just plug the receipt into my spreadsheet and then I put it in an envelope. You could also just take and keep an envelope of all the spreadsheet of all the receipts. I used to do that when I really wasn't super organized. Talk to your tax guy. Like if you run your taxes through years ago, I had a friend who didn't know you could deduct all this because like the very first, I think I met her at the conference. I went to this tax deduction class and I said, oh yeah, did you know you could deduct all your stuff? And she gave like all of her receipts for software, paper, because then that we were still in the stage where you were mailing your manuscript. So you would print off this chunk of paper and then mail it off to the publisher. And so she just gave all that information to her tax guy and he put it all in for her. So, 99 deductions. I've never heard of that. So, but anyway, I will have this link in the comments below. So if you guys have questions on that, you can go out there. So I'll put that in there as well. So I just thought I would go ahead and share this information just because I thought it would be helpful to people. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that it was. So, and this is, okay, so this is where, that's where you can find the information on the, if your family member died or not your family, if you're planning for your estate or whatever. And then this one is the, I think we're going to go to not stopping share. There we go. This one is that's that John Fox thing that we just went through for taxes. So that's kind of all I had today. I mean, there's not a lot to cover. And I'm still kind of, like I said, I'm still kind of floating in this weird world. Just because, my parents died so close together. And so a lot of the stuff that I talked about been doing taxes for years though, for both our business and for writing. So I'm a little more knowledgeable on the tax portion of this particular conversation than I am on the death portion, just because the death is still pretty fresh and obviously emotionally raw at some point. So just plan. I think if you could do nothing else to plan for your own legacy or whatever, would really be to do up a letter of direction, just so to kind of think about all the things that you've got. Like think about your assets. If you do a net worth statement and you've got like all your assets and stuff like that, and you can figure out what that is, and then do your letter of direction, sometimes that holds more weight than your will, because your will is really if you end up going to probate for court, so then you'll need it. So like my dad had a will because we managed to get that done, but we haven't gone to probate for his estate yet. So and I don't know that we'll need to, because we were able to take care of enough stuff. So yeah, but it was a mess. So if anything you can do is you just ease stuff for people, I think is pretty good. So well, if no one has any other questions, just gonna pop over here. Nope, nothing. Okay. Our next lunch is going to be June 4th at 11:30 a.m. I can tell you already that is probably going to be pre-recorded, just because June 4th is my husband's birthday, and we usually have an open house of our other business because it times out pretty well that way. So maybe not if he's traveling or gone or something, or I may do it out at the airport, just because it'll probably be shorter than if I do it live, but I'll probably pre-record something. And let me know in the comments below what you guys would be interested in talking about. So I will see you June 4th at 11:30. So pencil me in for lunch.